If you're driving down Harrow Creek Road and see a bus that glows like an open wound, do not get on. I'm writing this from the back seat while hanging upside down. The doors don't have handles, the people next to me haven't breathed in an hour, and my girlfriend's parents are currently flying toward me with wolf fangs and bat wings. I was worried about being late for dinner. I didn't know I was the main course. The clock on the dashboard of Brandon's Honda was a digital accusation, 8:47 p.m. He was already an hour and 17 minutes late for the dinner that was supposed to secure his future. He hadn't met her parents yet. Sarah had always been vague about them, describing them only as traditional and very particular about punctuality. Brandon, an accountant by trade and anxious by nature, had planned the route meticulously. But the address Sarah had texted him, 1300 Harrow Creek Road, seemed to have disappeared from reality the moment he crossed the county line. He had expected suburban sprawl, or perhaps an older, well-kept farmhouse. Instead, Harrow Creek Road was a decaying vein of cracked asphalt snaking through a pine forest so dense it seemed to devour the twilight. There were no streetlights, no houses, not even mailboxes. For the last 40 minutes, he had been driving in loops. The anxiety was a cold weight in his stomach, worse than any fear of spooky woods. He was going to make a terrible first impression. He picked up his phone to text her again, though he knew it was futile. His screen showed the dreaded no service triangle. In a fit of desperate hope, he had been spamming the refresh button on his GPS, which only succeeded in draining his battery from 18% to 4%. Thud, thud, thud. The Honda's engine sputtered, coughed, and died. Brandon's heart skipped beat. He looked at the fuel gauge. The needle was below E, a fact that his brain, previously focused on navigation, had completely failed to register. The sudden silence in the cabin was louder than the engine had been. He was alone on an unnamed back road, in total darkness, with no phone, no fuel, and a dead battery. The woods pressed in on either side, the towering pines looking like ribs arching over a desolate grave. He rolled down the window, hoping to hear the distant drone of the highway, but there was only the damp, mossy smell of the swamp and the unnerving, absolute silence of a place where nothing lived. He sat there for 20 minutes, paralyzed by the realization of how quickly a minor inconvenience had become a survival scenario. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. "Okay," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Walk. You have to walk back to the highway." It was 10 miles? 15? He visualized the distance. It was impossible in the pitch black. And then he saw it. It wasn't an incoming car with a friendly, horizontal sweep of headlights. It was a monolith of light cutting through the trees, approaching from further down Harrow Creek Road, the direction that shouldn't have led anywhere. It moved with an unnerving, fluid smoothness, gliding over the broken road without a single jolt. As it got closer, Brandon realized it wasn't white light. It was a deep, saturated crimson. The entire vehicle glowed, radiating an unnatural heat that seemed to shimmer above the asphalt before it. It was a bus, but unlike any transit vehicle he had ever seen. It looked ancient, stylized like something from the 1940s, with rounded chrome bumpers and small, circular porthole windows. But the paint wasn't red, it was a material that looked like oxidized blood, absorbing the ambient darkness and breathing out that sickly crimson luminescence. Brandon felt a spike of suspicion. What kind of route ran out here? But his desperation won. He scrambled out of his Honda, waving his arms in the middle of the road. "Stop. Please, I need help." The bus didn't slow down until it was almost upon him, the crimson glow washing over him like a baptism. It didn't make an engine noise, it hissed, the sound of air brakes. Yes, but layered beneath it was a sound like a collective exhaled sigh. He ran to the passenger door. Above the windshield, behind a cracked glass pane, The destination sign flipped over with an archaic, mechanical clack. It didn't read City Center or Main Street. It read 1300 Harrow Creek Road. Brandon froze. His mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe Sarah's dad works for the transit authority? Maybe this is some weird, eccentric private service? It was an impossible coincidence, a perfect, sinister lock-and-key moment that his logic center screamed at him to ignore. But the alternative was waiting out here for a help that might never come. The accordion-style door creaked open. The interior of the bus was bathed in the same dull red twilight. He couldn't see the driver. "Hello?" Brandon called out, stepping onto the metal riser. "I'm, trying to get to that address. Is this, do I pay?" Silence answered. He took one more step inside. The moment his back foot left the gravel, the door slammed shut behind him with the force of a guillotine. He spun around, grabbing the vertical metal bar. He yanked, but the door was sealed tight, the rubber gaskets fused as if they had been welded shut for decades. He turned to face the interior of the bus, and the world dissolved into madness. His logic broke. His equilibrium shattered. What he saw defied the fundamental laws of gravity, geometry, and sanity. The aisle did not lead down the center of the bus. Instead, the entire interior structure, the metal frame, the luggage racks, the floor itself, had been vertically sheared and flipped. Brandon wasn't standing on the floor. He was standing on the ceiling. Above him, which should have been the floor, the standard double seats were bolted upside down. Long, grimy poles extended from the ceiling down past him, anchoring into the structure beneath his feet. The lighting came from cracked, yellowing panels that were now at ankle height, casting shadows that stretched upwards toward the impossible ceiling. But it was the passengers that made the scream freeze in his throat. There were dozens of them. They weren't sitting. They were suspended. Every single passenger was hanging upside down from the inverted seats, their ankles secured by rusty leather straps to the legs of the chairs above, which were in reality below them. They were fully dressed, tweed coats, nursing scrubs, suits that looked like they belonged in the 1920s, children in pajamas, but their heads dangled just above the floor where Brandon stood. Their necks were elongated, stretched by the constant gravitational pull, their faces purpled with blood pooling in their craniums. And they were all staring at him. Dozens of pairs of eyes, reflecting the sickly yellow floor lights, tracked his movements from their inverted, dangling perspectives. None of them spoke. Their mouths hung open, slack from the inverted gravity, drool dripping upward onto the ceiling before pooling and dripping back down onto him in small burning drops that smelled of sulfur. He tried to run back to the driver's seat, to beg the man to let him out. But there was no driver. The large, black, horizontally mounted steering wheel spun frantically all on its own, clicking through turns with impossible speed. The accelerator pedal pumped up and down by an unseen force. The bus was running, but the captain was missing, and the vessel was navigating the serpentine road by some phantom guidance system. Brandon stumbled backward, tripping over one of the upturned light panels. He fell hard against a support pole. Right next to a passenger, an old man in a gray suit whose head was only inches from his own face. The man's eyes were milky with cataracts, but they focused on Brandon with intense, malevolent glee. Next stop. Brandon realizes that running is impossible. The front of the bus now leads to an endless, labyrinthine corridor of warped, vertical reality. He is trapped, climbing up the aisle towards the back of the bus. He explores the horrifying ecosystem of the bus, witnesses how the hanging passengers are fed, a gray sludge that drips upwards from vents. He sees objects in motion that ignore standard gravity. He tries to interact with the passengers, but they speak only in riddles about the host and the sacrifice. The physical toll on Brandon increases. The strange, sulfur-smelling atmosphere begins to warp his own sense of reality. He reaches the final row of seats, the destination sign outside now flipping to read, "Reservations confirmed. Meet the family." The back of the bus is a dining compartment, but it's the most horrifying violation of domesticity yet. The table is set vertically against the back wall. The dishes held in place by magnetism. Seats are arranged in a circular formation, defying gravity. Sitting in the rearmost seat, watching him with a calm, sweet smile that now seems monstrous, is Sarah. She is untouched, perfectly dressed. "You're late, Brandon," she says, her voice echoing strangely. "But you're here," he screams, begging her to explain, but she merely looks upwards. "Meet my parents." Then from the luggage compartment in the extreme back ceiling, two shapes emerge. They do not fall, they glide with serpentine grace. These are not human. Their faces are distinctly lupine, long muzzles filled with rows of needle-like teeth, eyes glowing red, but their skin is the death-pale white of a corpse, and their bone structure is stretched like a bat's. They wear tattered evening wear, the contradiction making the horror worse. They do not fly with wings, they ignore physics, flying through the air of the bus as if they are underwater. The parents approach him, their scent a combination of ozone and rotted meat. Sarah smiles and says, "They have been waiting so long for a new bloodline." The final service. The meal is not dinner served to Brandon. Brandon is the dinner. He realizes that the entire night was a setup. The elusive address, the dead battery, the fuel, all of it was a psychic tether pulling him to this specific, mobile pocket dimension. Sarah isn't their victim. She is their daughter, the lure. The parents, the hybrids of vampire and werewolf. Begin to examine the passengers, who were once lures themselves, now broken servants. Watch the ritualistic preparation. Brandon struggles, trying to use the inverted logic of the bus against them, throwing up objects to hit them. But he is trapped in a reality they control. As the final service begins, Brandon understands why the bus looked like a glowing crimson cell. It is the stomach of the beast, and he has just been digested. He accepts his new role. He is strapped into an inverted seat. As his body adjusts to the unnatural gravity, he feels the blood rushing to his head, and his vision starts to warp.
Brandon, now a hanging statistic, staring out the porthole window as the bus pulls up behind another standard car on a dark highway, the sign ever switching to picking up passengers.